Alright, I am finally getting around to making this video, and this is a video that I wanted to have done like 2 months ago. And we're going to make this video in the shade today because it's really sunny and over 90 degrees, so bad lighting, blame the heat for that. But anyway, here are these two bikes. This is the Philodo Forester over here and the Wired Freedom over here. Both are 60-volt bikes, and a lot of people are wondering the differences between the two, and that's what I'm going to go through today. A lot of people want to know which bike is better, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get into that discussion. What I'm going to do is point out the differences between the two bikes, and people can formulate their own opinions on that. That's kind of how I operate. I don't want anybody to buy a bike that they don't want or they're not going to be happy with. So I'm just going to get down to the brass tacks, and we're going to just talk about the differences, and you can formulate your own opinion. Also, I've noticed that in the past that anytime I compare tech and I say, well, this one does this better than that one, or that one does this better, people who are emotionally invested in a product tend to get butthurt when their product doesn't match my opinion. So we're not going to do that. I don't have the patience for it. I'm just going to talk about the differences and the similarities, and you can come to your own conclusion which bike is for you. With all of that being said, full disclosure, I am a Philodo affiliate. I do make a little bit of money if you buy through my links to buy a Philodo bike. I am not a Wired affiliate, but I don't want anybody to be discouraged from buying a Wired bike. They're both excellent. I just want you to buy which one is the right bike for you. I'm not going to sell out to Philodo. I don't make enough money off of YouTube to basically push anybody's product over anybody else's. I just wanted to put that out there so that you know that everything is out on the table. I do YouTube as a hobby. I make a little bit of play money from it, but it does not pay my bills, nor will it ever pay my bills. I don't ever want it to be a full-time gig. I can't imagine a worse hell. Now let's get into the differences between these two bikes. Basically, we'll cover the major differences first, and then we'll get into the minor differences. And one of the major differences right away is this is a 2-battery bike. They're both 60-volt bikes, but this one has a 20 amp hour battery up front and a 15 amp hour battery in the rear, giving it 35 amp hours of battery life between the two. This bike over here, the Philodo, has one giant 26 amp hour battery, so it's short about 9 amp hours in comparison. The next big major difference is price, and the Wired Freedom is more expensive. You can't get this model anymore. This is the early 2025 model, and it is now been replaced with a upgrade. So the upgraded version of this is going to cost you anywhere from about $800 to $1,000 more than the Philodo Forester. The next big difference is performance and how they both put power to the road. The Wired Freedom has one big powerful motor in the rear wheel. The Philodo has two smaller motors that are nothing to sneeze at, but they are not as powerful as that big motor. As far as top speed goes, they are both almost identical. The Wired Freedom might be like 2 miles per hour faster on its top end. One thing that does drive me nuts about this bike is that on its takeoff, it's very mild, and I think they did it that way to preserve the motor life. It's because these motors don't have the steel reinforcement like the Hintac motor does. It's nylon gears, so that's why it's so mild on the takeoff. It's so it doesn't strip those motors out. Okay, according to our built-in speedometer, we got just a little bit over 38 miles per hour. That was going uphill, and now we're going to turn around and go downhill. Okay, according to the speedometer here, we got to just a hair over 41 miles per hour. Now I'm going to go get the wired Freedom, and we're going to do the same route, same test, and see what it can get up to. All right, here we go. All right, based on the Philodo speedometer, which I have seen to be wrong, it looks like the Philodo got here faster. It got up to 38 miles per hour, and this one hit 30, just a hair over 36. But here we go, going downhill on the way back. All right, according to the speedometer of the wired Freedom, we hit just a hair over 44 miles per hour. And I'll have to look at GPS for both speed tests, and we'll compare them and see what we got up to. The wired Freedom does have a lot more powerful takeoff from a stop. The reason that this can take off so much faster from a stop is because those steel reinforced gears can take a lot more torque without stripping out. The Philodo is a great bike, but it has a lot more mellow takeoff because it has nylon gears in these motors as opposed to the steel reinforced gears over here. And if this took off with the same force that this bike takes off with, it would strip out these nylon gears in here, and you'd have two giant paperweights for motors. The way that it takes its power is through two smaller motors as opposed to one giant tough motor. And with that being said, it distributes the power in a completely different way. With that being said, to me it feels like the Philodo does a lot better job climbing steep hills with the second motor up front. But the wired Freedom is not bad at all at climbing hills. If I had to explain the difference in the two, this one feels a little more like a sports car, and this one feels a little bit more like a Jeep. That's the best way I can describe it. Another thing of note, that when you're riding these bikes and you've got that high-speed torque, that one is going to be a lot better for crossing high traffic roads, and this one is going to be a lot better for navigating through high pedestrian traffic areas because of the lower speed, better control. Now you can tune this bike to make it better in high pedestrian areas, and we'll get into that now. And another major difference between these two bikes is your customization options. This one gives you a lot of customization options. This one is very plain Jane and basic in what it can do. It's not a bad experience riding the Philodo Forester, but as far as tuning it to fit you, if you want a lot of customization options, they're just not there. An example of that is this bike. Like I mentioned, when you're going through high pedestrian areas, you may not want all of that power. So the way I've set this bike up is that I've got throttle follow turned off, and what that basically does is when I hit this throttle, it gives it all the power to the rear wheel. But I've got the pedal assist tuned really mild. So I basically ride this bike in pedal assist level 1, which takes me up to like 20 miles per hour from just pedaling it. But it doesn't give me that like breakneck acceleration when I'm trying to navigate through a high pedestrian area. So I can feather the brakes and pedal it and not take off like a rocket. But when I need to cross a road, I've got the power from the throttle and I can zip right across the road right away. That is the biggest downside of the Philodo Forester, is that it doesn't have any kind of really strong acceleration from a stop when you need it. Once you get the bike rolling, then it kicks in, but the reason for that is, like I said, so it doesn't strip the gears out on the motors from a dead takeoff. Once you get moving, once you get rolling, you can then give it throttle and it ramps up and it accelerates just fine, but it's not going to have that really torquey high-speed takeoff from a stop like the Wired Freedom does. Beyond customization, you've got some options to monitor more information in the Wired Freedom screen than you do in the Philodo Forester screen. For example, you've got a temperature gauge over here and you've got an actual battery percentage readout, whereas over here you've just got a battery meter bar. The last major difference between these bikes is the controller output. The Wired Freedom, I believe, has a 45 amp controller, and the Philodo Forester has a 29 amp controller, I think, but it's split between two motors. I'm going to put those exact specs on the screen now because I can't remember off the top of my head what they are. Also, the Wired Freedom supposedly has a potted controller, which helps with overheating. In my experience, the Philodo Forester can maintain its sustained top speed for a longer period than the Wired Freedom can. It's because the Philodo is spreading its power over two motors as opposed to one big motor. That one big motor is going to generate a lot of heat, and it can get to a point where it's going to shut down. It's got sensors built in there that when you exceed, I think, 390 degrees, it's going to shut the motor off and let it cool down. I ran into a problem where the motor overheated and the sensor blew out. Wired was really great about covering their warranty and sending me a brand new motor out to put in this bike to cover that problem, but I was told specifically by Wired the temperature of the bike should be kept under 275 degrees. Once you get to that 275 degree mark, you should stop, you should back off and let the motor cool down. Now, this bike, I've not had any overheating issues with it, but also I have no way of tracking any kind of heating issues with the bike. So as far as riding it at sustained top speed, you can do it longer with the Philodo Forester, but you have no way of knowing if you're in the red or not. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Now, with the major differences out of the way, I'm going to talk about what I consider the minor differences. And the minor differences, I think, are the differences where you could switch these components out to make these bikes match each other more closely if you wanted to. So for tires, they are both 26 by 4 inch tires, but the Wired Freedom has Kenda Crusades and the Philodo Forester has Chow Yang. The Wired Freedom has metal fenders. The Philodo Forester has plastic fenders. The Philodo Forester has a dual ring chain guard. The Wired Freedom has a single ring chain guard, but it also has a 56 tooth chain ring, so it's a bit bigger than the Philodo Forester. The Wired Freedom has a D&M XO 8RC rear suspension. It has RST guide front suspension, and the Philodo Forester has a D&M A06, I'm guessing is what that is, and the front shocks seem to be unbranded. This is the headlight for the Wired Freedom. This is the headlight for the Philodo Forester. From the factory, the Wired Freedom has BMX handlebars. I didn't like them, so I changed them out to something that I like. That's going to be another thing where people are going to get butthurt if they really do like BMX handlebars. Look, man, it's just a matter of that's what I like, you ride what you like. But it is a difference between the bikes. The Philodo Forester has mountain bike bars stock, and these are the bars that came on the bike. Another difference between the Philodo Forester and the Wired Freedom is that the Philodo Forester has a keyed ignition. I know it's not ignition because it was an electric bike, but basically you can shut this off, pull the key out, and nobody can turn the bike on without the key. The Wired Freedom does not have that option. The Philodo Forester has a wider seat with more padding in comparison to the Wired Freedom. The Wired Freedom has Gemma hydraulic brakes. The Philodo Forester has DY Island hydraulic brakes. The last comparison I'm going to make is customer service. And in my experience, I had a major issue with the Wired Freedom. As I mentioned, the sensor on the motor blew out, and they were amazing about recognizing the warranty and getting a replacement motor out for this bike. And they did it in a very short time. The only issue I had with the Philodo Forester is that when it came from the factory in shipping, it had a bent and broken derailleur guard, and they sent another one out almost immediately, and I didn't even ask for one. They just saw it in my video and they sent one out to me. Appearance is subjective, so I'm going to let you decide which one you think looks better. So that's about going to wrap it up. I think I've covered just about everything I can cover on these bikes. If you have any questions, post them in the comments section and I will do my best to answer them. As far as they go, they're both great bikes, but I wanted to give as much information on each of these bikes so you could come to your own conclusion which one's going to work out best for you. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.